Lurking in the backyard of this cute and inconspicuous house is something that's been illegal since for as long as I can remember. These things were outlawed decades ago for fear of the dire consequences that they can have on beautiful neighborhoods just like this one. This is Ann Arbor, consistently ranked as one of the best places to live in the United States. This area was developed during the 1950s. It's mostly made of modestly sized Cape Cod-style homes on quarter-acre lots, one sidewalk, one house, and one garage per parcel. The owners of this place, a four-person family led by two architects and professors at the University of Michigan, told us why they decided to take it upon themselves to design and build something that was so controversial in their very own backyard.
Ann Arbor has a very serious housing shortage, like many cities.
So they decided to build a little house in their backyard in order to help. It's called an Accessory Dwelling Unit, or an ADU for short. You might know them as granny flats, or in-law housing, or coach houses. But they're all basically the same thing, a smaller, independent residential dwelling unit located in the same lot as a standalone single-family home. This one allows the owners to save for their children's college funds. But at what cost? Residents have fought against these for years, citing their potential for it to decrease their property values and increase traffic. This little house could disrupt the tranquility of their pocket of gentility and worse, wipe away the very reason that they decided to live here in the first place.
I think it proves that it doesn't change the character, and it's quite secluded back here. You don't really see it from the street frontage, and we've doubled the number of families that can live on this one piece of land.
Even though this kind of thing is now legal to build in your backyards in Ann Arbor, its size and shape is pretty tightly regulated. This one represents the largest allowable volume by law. It can only be a maximum of 21 feet tall, and it cannot exceed 800 square feet, with Ellie and Adam's lot size of 8,300 square feet.
So once you start to draw those lines on the site plan, more or less, you get a pretty, fixed footprint.
I got a full tour to this ADU to see what all the fuss was about. Adam showed me all around the front, the back, and the interior.
So it's a simple space. There's a bedroom loft right above us. And then this is all one continuous space from the kitchen to the living room.
And to me, it seems like a great way to help solve a housing problem. And I'm happy that things are changing to accommodate this common sense solution. And while these have been illegal, there's been a shift in sentiment to allow for these to occur all across the United States. In New York, the bill is called AB A4854, and there's similar deregulation on the other side of the country in California. And in December 2020, the City Council in Chicago voted to re-legalize accessory dwelling units after their embargo of them in 1957. Not only are all of these cities allowing for these kinds of constructions to be built nowadays, they're actually encouraging them. And this represents an almost complete reversal in sentiment of city planners and local governments across the United States. But why the sudden change? To understand how we got here, I want to head back to Chicago right quick and talk a little bit about the history of ADUs and how they developed. Here in Chicago, coach houses have been around almost since the beginning of the settlement of the city. Even middle-class houses here originally had small buildings behind the main house for hay storage, for housing cows or horses and buggies. This was a tradition that was brought over from English planning as a way of meeting your transportation and nutritional needs inside of an urban environment. It kind of reminds you just how indistinct the urban areas and rural areas may have been at the time. But think about it as having like a garage today. But the spatial needs at the time for that kind of building were more like a small barn in the city. In more affluent households, the structure may also include a small apartment for staff like a driver or a caretaker of the animals. But in less affluent areas, it might have been a stick frame building that at one time had been the main house facing the street. It was the first settlement building and built in a way that represented the extent of their budget at the time. When the family had raised more funds to be able to afford a nicer house, perhaps made out of brick, which wouldn't burn, they would move the original building to the back and build their new brick one that faces the street. This rear building probably wouldn't then have been used to keep animals. Instead, it would have been used to house extended family or been rented out for the family's supplemental income. As it became less common to keep horses and cows downtown, majority of the coach houses were converted to garage or apartments. Homeowners could make money by renting the space out, often to lower income families. It had the effect of densifying neighborhoods without building much more than what was already there, and it created a neighborhood that accommodated a wider mixture of income levels. But by the 1950s, this increase in density and demographic and socioeconomic diversity, it was seen as more of a problem than an asset. Chicago's population was also in the midst of a boom, which led city officials to fear overcrowding as a potential disaster on the horizon. And by 1957, the city of Chicago banned secondary residential structures altogether. This was regulated largely through zoning restrictions that limited lots to a single dwelling unit. Municipalities also imposed overall density restrictions that drove cities to sprawl outward rather than upward. So no new coach houses could be built. Existing structures were grandfathered in as being acceptable, and today some of the most unique residential spaces are actually coach houses. Their variable sizes and shapes makes for a much wider array of interior conditions than the standard front-facing building on a standard-sized lot. But beyond the cool insides, coach houses allow for a denser neighborhood without much overall effect on its feel or its character. Today's sprawl is understood to be a much greater threat and concern than overcrowding, and mixed income housing is the gold standard of ensuring vibrant neighborhoods. And coach houses provide both. So let's head back to Ann Arbor to discuss some more of the plus sides of ADUs in general. We've talked a little bit about the urbanistic benefits of ADUs related to density and diversity, but even when considered against other options for achieving these kinds of qualities, ADUs are really a standout. ADUs become part of an existing neighborhood that already has all of the necessary infrastructure for residential living. ADUs don't require more concrete or other impervious ground surfaces. And this is because ADUs are where streets, driveways, and sidewalks already exist. Increases in impervious paving, like the concrete used for driveways, leads to a host of problems because they prevent the natural soaking in of rainwater. This can lead to flooding and erosion problems. So any solution that builds in a way that doesn't exacerbate this problem is a win-win for everybody. ADUs offer a bottom-up growth solution that allow neighborhoods to densify slowly over time, rather than through a single large or relatively disruptive development. ADUs are typically pretty covert as a result of code regulations. They're also typically made of wood construction, or at least building techniques and materials that aren't so resource intensive when compared to larger building types that require massive amounts of steel or concrete. And this is also really good for the planet. While most ADUs are made from platform framing wood construction, their small size and relatively modest investment makes them good candidates for more experimental ways of building. As I mentioned, this one is located in the backyard of a family of architects. These architects are part of a practice called TEAM, T-E-A-M, and this little house is their first ground-up construction.
This seemed like a good project to start with in terms of the scale, monetary investment, opportunities to experiment with different building technologies.
Where much of their earlier work lived on as exhibitions or pavilions, this little house was a great introduction for them into the world of design and creating buildings to be built for others.
Something this size is great to test different approaches to building technologies, products, etc. This is fun kind of like speccing these materials. So this is a stainless steel mesh. We're going to plant various bushes and greenery here, hopefully like a climbing vine that will actually climb up this so it'll turn into more of like a green wall.
This house is built using SIPs panels for walls and roofs. SIPs, or SIP, are structural insulated panels, a high-performance building system which is a sandwich of foam stuffed between wooden sheathing material. They're really strong and relatively lightweight, and building with this system is like using tilt-up concrete. You have structurally rigid panels that you lift or tilt up into place.
So you can really feel the continuous space of the whole ADU as one. That's a nice thing about SIPs, right? You could just build it as a shell, and so you don't have to kind of divide it up on the inside. So we were interested in embracing the kind of OSB aesthetic of the SIPs panels, and we're hoping by using some of those materials and exposing them and kind of making them look nice that maybe people would be more open to a slightly different interior residential kind of domestic aesthetic.
But you don't need to be an architect to appreciate the benefits of an ADU. As Adam mentioned before, they can generate income for the homeowner, or you might decide to build it for any variety of reasons. It's really up to the homeowner, and that's what this is really all about, an opportunity that gives property owners more choice in how they use their own property. At the same time, though, they should offer dignity and privacy for those that live in them.
We wanted to create a dedicated patio for the tenants, so this is their private space. There's a fence we put in here to protect it a bit from the main house. And then we're lucky enough to face a public park, so we have no neighbors back here. So in the summer, it's a big wall of green.
While this example is unique, ADUs are popping up across the country. This charge is led by places like Portland, Oregon, which grants around 300 to 500 permits for ADU construction each year. But every city has its own unique approach. In California, Los Angeles recently held a competition for architects to design a series of ADUs that are pre-approved for construction by the city. Any of these designs can just be purchased from the architect, and this process doesn't require anyone to be familiar with hiring an architect or dealing with zoning or other hassles associated with construction. Choosing one of the pre-approved models would shave weeks off of your timeline. While some of the pre-approved designs are more adventurous than others, each one comes with a whole lot of options that you can purchase from the architects directly. Some of my favorites on the list are Laurel Broughton's Bread Box, which plays on the mission-style house which permeates LA. It has curved stucco walls and a clay roof. Or this one by Jennifer Bonner, called the Lean-To ADU, which features a roof deck and a playful gesture with a rotating dark rectangle that comes from the roof angle and the stairs. Detractors of ADUs worry about the potential for them to change the character of a neighborhood or to overstress existing infrastructure. But a lot of this might come from a pretty misguided mentality. ADU construction happens slowly over time, and it's a great option for incrementally building up density. ADUs are an exciting reinvention of an old type. They're one of those things that we had around for a long time, but forgot about during some of the more misguided and purely automobile-focused planning efforts of the 1950s and beyond.
However, today we're beginning to recognize their benefits, while being able to control for and limit their downsides. As a unique type of building, they tend to get marred in red tape and bureaucracy as early adopters attempt to navigate their construction. But the ones that do are rewarded with a pretty flexible and relatively big bang for the buck. And hopefully these adventurous folks like Adam Fury will pave the way for more as we get more comfortable with how to design and build these helpful structures.
Financing and loans happen by being able to compare properties to other properties in the area that are similar. And if you're trying to do something new, that's harder to compare it to. So we're hoping that this demonstrates the value of this kind of build.
This video was made possible by Henson Shaving, who makes amazingly high-quality razors in their aerospace machine shop in Canada. This thing is incredible. It's made by craftspeople in a family-run business that also makes parts for the ISS, the Mars rover, and other space satellites. They've taken that expertise and aimed it straight at crafting the perfect razor. Through their research, they found that the way that the razor blade is supported is crucial to the smoothness of its operation. The flexible blade, if it's left too exposed, can result in chatter that causes nicks and cuts and irritation. So Henson machines their razors out of aluminum with incredibly tight tolerances befitting the aerospace heritage. This allows them to expose the minimum amount of actual blade, just 27 microns. The blade ends up being supported along its length, eliminating chatter and eliminating the problems that plague most razors. As soon as you touch this thing, it feels like something that could have been integral to a space station or something. It has all this clever engineering features like the channels that help to easily remove hair and cream. It can also use normal razor blades that cost like 5 cents and are recyclable, making the razor a great investment in a high-quality, earth-friendly, personal item that makes you feel like an astronaut every time you shave. So use the code Stewart Hicks, one word, in your cart from the link below to get a free 100 pack of blades when you purchase a razor and start getting that high-quality shave that you've been wanting today.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Down in the discussion, let's chat about your thoughts on ADUs. Are they going to kill or rejuvenate our neighborhoods? After that, consider checking out some of these other videos which come out on Thursdays. See you over there.